Hello, my lovely family. This is Robin Landsong, and I'm here on this lovely spring day here in California. Obviously, I'm at a little bit of elevation, and today I want to talk about how to actually get heard, how to communicate in a way that it lands for the other person's nervous system. So I'm going to start by a story, and this was told to me by a grandmother who had raised several children, and her grandson was screaming all the time. So if somebody asked him, what do you want for dinner? He would scream his answer. If he was told it's time to go, he would scream his response. And so his parents and his mom and dad were recoiling, and his siblings were recoiling and saying like, stop talking so much. And like they were blocking him out. So the grandmother came over and she said, I can't hear you. And at first he was like, what's happening here? And he would just scream again. And then she would lean forward again and say, I can't hear you. And so he finally got it. And he realized, in order to communicate to my grandma, I have to whisper. And so he would come over to her and say, Grandma, I'm hungry. Can I have some lunch? And then she would say yes. And it would just be this nervous system calming thing on both sides. So when I heard this story, I had two responses. One is to wonder about what is agitating his nervous system so much. And for so many kids, it's wheat or some other kind of allergen from the glyphosate and the non-organic ingredients. And so those ingredients literally jack up a kid's brain so they can't calm down. So if you know a kid or have a kid who's spewing stuff out their mouth that's not so pleasant, think about what's going in their mouth, what you're feeding them. I've had so many parents be like, once I got rid of the wheat, my kid calmed down and was so much more pleasant to be around. So that's one thing. And two, I want to talk about what she achieved of getting him to come back to a calmer brain state by her being in a calmer brain state. So when either we're yelling or somebody is yelling at us, they're in they're in red brain, which is survival state. And whether it's a perceived threat or a real threat, people are going to just react on survival decisions. And so that's a pretty baseline way to react. It's not going to be thinking through long-term consequences that happens up here in the frontal brain. So what I want to say too about red brain is that it's kind of contagious. So when somebody's yelling at us, our nervous system says, one, that's a threat. And two, if they're all jacked up, we look around to see, what's the danger? Like, should I get alarmed with them because there's some threat? So the key is to try and stay in observer mode as much as possible and not fall into red brain with them. It's going to happen some in our biology because that's how we're hardwired, like your heart might get going a little harder. But as much as you possibly can, and I can't always do this myself, is to stay in neutral observer and to back up. And that they might need 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks to calm down, to get in a different brain state. So limbic is the part of our brain that can assess really quickly. So it's still going to have judgmentalness in it, but it's better than being in red brain, which is survival, which is like eat or be eaten. And can be quite aggressive. And so ideally with exercise, movement, self-regulation, co-regulation, feeding ourselves a warm meal, taking some breath practices, whatever we need to do to come back to a centered place in our body, in green brain up here in the frontal, we can not only think of our needs, gimme, my, but we can think of their needs. And that way it can be much more likely to be successful communication that's going to end up being a win-win or some healthy compromise. But it's not going to be grabbing because what happens when both people are in red brain, guess where we are? Scarcity. And good decisions don't happen when you're in scarcity land. So generosity is up here in the frontal. Kindness, compassion, empathy is up here in the frontal. So again, whatever you need to do to regulate yourself, and like I say, it's contagious to be around people in red brain, so take some space and make some boundaries. So if this has been helpful to you and you put this in place in your life, and you have some story that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it in the comments below, because I love to hear when we learn our biology, our animal biology, then we don't need to judge ourselves so much about our reactions and about our interactions. So again, all my teachings are about, can we come back to empathy? Can we come back to co-regulation? Can we come back to interdependence where we're good to each other rather than being in scarcity land, which is fighting over small crumbs? So, hope that's helpful. And like I say, I'm in California, so it's going to actually be 70 here in a couple days, which I think is super funny. And I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear this is helpful to you. And if you try it out and the other person doesn't know this, just keep it to yourself and regulate yourself and do what you need to keep yourself in a good, balanced nervous system place. So, thank you very much, my family, for listening. And adios, and I will see you next time. Namaste.